Hello to all global chess lovers. We have reached number 7 in the Soviet series of problems, and it proved to be a real cracker. It's a mate in 4, and just looking at the position here, we have yet again a situation where white has to be very careful because black can move nothing but his rook. Now if white were to take this rook, it would be a stalemate. And also there is a preponderance of material on the white side. Quite a preponderance, in fact. We have a rook against a rook. There are 2 bishops and 6 pawns against 6 pawns, so that's even in the pawns, but definitely 2 minor pieces plus. Equally, the white king can't move, but that's a good thing. Now, what occurred to me when I looked at this position and started spending a few minutes over it is that there's the distinct possibility of combining the 2 bishops. They're already controlling certain key squares like d1 and e1, and the rook is doing a splendid job on the second rank. But it's possible to go very wrong very quickly in this position, as I discovered, and I had to repeatedly investigate it to make absolutely sure that there was no question of me slipping up anywhere at all. It's a bit like all the problems really when you think about it, especially the last one, something on which I didn't touch. I missed one possible reply for black deliberately on problem number 6, and I'm just wanting perhaps somebody who is keen-eyed to come forward and say that it's been cooked. It hasn't, but it looks as though it has. Like I say, I've deliberately left that one off, and there is a theme in this which is very reminiscent of that I haven't discussed in that problem. So that's not much of a help to you, is it? I know, but one of these days I shall explain it. If nobody comes forward and asks me about it, then I'll give you the details. But for the moment, just leave it that we have one that's outstanding on that, but it's not a problem. It's still a mate in 3. But this mate in 4 here, there are pins galore. There are opportunities to pin the rook and deliver checkmate, and there are possibilities to checkmate, I would say, with the dark squared bishop on b2. If you imagine this dark squared bishop here, if it could get over to here right this minute, it would be checkmate, wouldn't it? Because the rook covers the second rank and the light squared bishop covers d1. The question is, how do you get it to b2? Can it be managed to get to b2? And are there any other squares where you could deliver checkmate? Well, I think what we'll do first of all is we'll see what doesn't work. Let's just move over to the pocket chess set again. Okay, there we go. Let's take a look at it there. It's exactly the same position. Yeah, everything is the same. You always have to be careful that you get it just right. Well, what doesn't work here is bishop g3. Now, what we're wanting to do, of course, this was the first move that I looked at. What we're wanting to do here, of course, is to play bishop to f4, and that will be check and mate. No question about that. Just to prove it, and that is definitely checkmate. However, there's a sneaky move here. Can you see it for black to stop bishop f4? It's a nice sacrifice. Usually in these sorts of positions, the opponent has to interpose pieces. That's been also a regular feature in a lot of these games. Just to have a few more seconds to look at it. Well, what he wouldn't want to play is rook d8. He has to move his rook because, like I've said, nothing else can be moved. So he wouldn't want to go to d8 because there would be bishop f4. And then he would have to interpose the rook, and then it would be rook h1 checkmate, because the rook, like I was saying earlier, there are pins followed by checkmate, and that would indeed be one of them. So black would have to be extremely careful not to fall into that one. So ruling out rook d8, what else is there? That's the original position again, and white has played bishop g3, which is not the solution, but I thought I'd give it to you because it was my original idea. Well, the reply in fact is to take this pawn here, and what black is evidently intending to do is to take that bishop on g3 to stop it from checkmating. However, of course, bishop f4 here is no good because black would simply take the bishop. But bishop e5 is a possibility, and like I was suggesting earlier, b2 is a possibility also. Now, if white can get his bishop to b2, that would be still there, by the way. Yep. So bishop b2, there would be checkmate, and that is one way of white getting the bishop to b2 via g3, e5, and then finally b2. However, black has other ideas, because after bishop e5, we play rook to d4. And that's black's second move. And white cannot control d2 here, you notice, for the simple reason that if he were now to play bishop f4, it can be taken. And if he takes the rook, that's the third move, because he's already played bishop to g3, then to e5, and now taken the rook. It's stalemate, isn't it? Because the rook controls the second rank and this bishop controls here. This is why it's vitally important to remember, don't touch that rook. So you just can't do it, and you can't deliver mate either. Rook d4 scuppers you. So you might think, oh, I can take it and then I can deliver mate on b2, but in fact, he's stalemated. There's just nothing that can move of black's. And you see, if he did play bishop f4, and you go to here, like this, and he comes here, black can easily get away by means of d2. There's definitely no mate in 4. So that's definitely out the question. So bishop g3 just doesn't work. It's a nice idea. It looks worthy of consideration, and of course all moves are worthy of consideration. The trick here is not to spend too long on them, because you become diverted from your real mission, and that is to find the solution to this problem. Let me just make sure that I have the right position again there. Yes, that is correct, right, with the rook on h2. Right, so what we need here is an Alexander Alekhine waiting move again. And this is one that I found immediately after bishop g3. Same bishop. Of course, there's no point in going to f2, because then the king has a golden opportunity to escape, because the second rank is no longer protected by the white rook. So you don't want to go to f2. So I think by process of elimination, that leaves only one square remaining. We've tried g3, it doesn't work. f2 wouldn't work. So plonk this bishop on e1. Now, as soon as you look at that, you immediately think, well, bishop d2 is threatened, and that's checkmate. And so it is. So how does black stop it? Well, evidently rook takes g4 wouldn't stop it, because if he takes that, although it works against bishop g3, it's absolutely useless against bishop d2. And there's the proof positive, and that is definitely checkmate. And we haven't taken black's rook. We must be ever so mindful. This is instructive. These positions where they begin with what could so easily be a stalemate. I always look on positions, no matter how many other pieces are on the board, as a possible stalemate, because I'm wary of them. You can so easily fall into them. And taking the rook here would definitely be a stalemate. So the caveat is don't touch the rook. So after bishop to e1, how does black stop bishop d2? That is the pressing matter. Incidentally, many people would think here, well, he can't ever get to b2 because the pawn's in the way. Well, it is. That's perfectly true, yes. But he doesn't go that way. There's another route. When you can't get in at the front door, you try the side door. Not bad advice, is it? So the move, in fact, is rook d8, which I did mention as a reply to bishop g3. It didn't work against bishop g3, but it is absolutely necessary. It is a forced move, so that if you put the bishop here, the rook would take it. Now, many people would think here, oh, well, this is fine because I can play here anyway. We'll go here, and then you can go here for the third move, and he goes here, and then you take it. Oh, that's checkmate, isn't it? Well, no, it isn't, because the pawn would whip the rook off and queen it. And that is the problem with playing bishop d2, thinking that you can still go ahead because you have the rook to back rank mate. I'm afraid that it's not as simple as that. So that just doesn't work. So let's just put everything back for a moment. Right, so it was bishop e1, threatening bishop d2, and then rook to d8, stopping bishop d2. So that's one move each. You've three more moves left. This is a mate in 4. I keep emphasizing that point. Not a mate in 3, a mate in 4 now. This is the only mate in 4 in the Soviet series, and it's problem number 7. How do you progress from here? What do you do? Now, this is what I was telling you about the problem number 6, one reply that I didn't touch upon. Well, I did in a way, but I put it in a sort of a vague way without actually demonstrating it. Where you move a piece and then you move it again. In fact, in problem number 6, it has been demonstrated, but not quite the way that it will have to be demonstrated one of these days to prove absolutely that that is the solution to that particular problem. So, one to think about. Well, what you have to do here is to be mindful of the fact that you do want to get your black squared bishop to b2 if you can possibly manage it. d2 would be nice, but b2 is a better way of doing it. Well, we've already been through my initial idea. Why not play it now? Cecil Purdy, who I have mentioned in previous videos, is an excellent player, and he had some very interesting ideas. Perhaps more suited to correspondence chess. He was world champion in correspondence chess, so his credentials are not in doubt. He wasn't quite as good as that over the board, but what he did say, which was very interesting once, is that the very best correspondence players could often think for days over a move and still not be sure whether they had it right or not. So that's something also worth thinking about. Sure, speed chess is fine, it's fun, it's quick, and for anyone who has a short attention span, it's excellent. But if you're prepared to spend the requisite amount of time to make sure that you get these moves as accurate as possible, then correspondence chess is a good grounding for it, so long as you can be sure that the opponent isn't using a search engine, which undoubtedly many would resort to doing now, which is a shame, but anyhow. But what Cecil Purdy also said, he had a maxim that if you know that you're going to have to play a move, not this time, but next time, try substituting it for the first move and see how it works. But in fact, what I've done here is I've done a Purdy in reverse. Instead of playing bishop g3 at once, I've played bishop e1 and then g3 without actually knowing that I'd have to play bishop g3 on the second move and substituting. Well, Purdy's advice here wouldn't work because we've already tried one bishop g3 and it doesn't work. But here, bishop e1 and then bishop e3 does work. Now, what is the reply to this? Well, the threat here now is bishop f4, check. And if he plays rook to d2, then you play bishop takes d2, and that is a mate on d2 because this bishop here is covering d1. So that's the threat. So what does black do to counteract that threat? So white has played bishop e1, black has responded with rook d8, and now black has taken that bishop, not put it back on its original square of h4, but it's gone to g3 instead. How does black counter bishop f4? He has to stop bishop f4. Many would say he could go here. He could. The problem with that is white would play bishop f4. And then all that black would have would be to interpose the rook. And then bishop e3, another square, but that would still be checkmate. No doubt about that. No way out. So that really doesn't work. So what does he have available? What is his really only realistic move in this position after bishop e1, rook d8, bishop g3? He has to move the rook, bear in mind. He's nothing else to move. This is the difficulty for black. He has to keep moving that rook and hope that white will be mug enough to take it. Well, rook d4 is the move, which we've seen before covering this here. So bishop f4 clearly is out of the question there. So what does white reply? We're two moves into this four-move problem. Incidentally, while I think of it, just before we move on to figuring out white's third move, if black had gone here, then we can play rook h1. And if black played rook d1, then we could play bishop f4. And that's mate because the rook is pinned. It can't go anywhere. So or if he'd played rook d1, perhaps, you might be thinking, what happens then? Well, it's effectively the reverse. You play bishop f4, check. And then he's forced to interpose. And then you play rook h1. And this time, it's the rook that's pinned by the bishop, and it's still checkmate. So that just doesn't work. Rook to d2 because of checkmate by the bishop, or rook to d1 and then checkmate by the rook. Both roads lead to the same result. So bishop e1, rook d8, bishop g3, rook d4, stopping bishop f4. What is white's reply there? I'll just give you a moment to think about it. Well, this is a move that I had in mind when I originally played one bishop g3, but it just didn't work at that time. Well, it's bishop e5. That's number 3. And don't forget, black can only move his rook, so he has to move that rook somewhere. Where does he move it? Just move it anywhere. Move it here. And what do we do? It could go anywhere. It doesn't really make any difference at all. Because if the rook comes here, the bishop controls this. If the rook goes here, the rook controls it. You need to control d2 and d1. You must. So just to put it back for a second, pick any square you want. Anywhere you like, you can take that pawn, it makes no odds. Just go here. And how does white finish this game? It's mate on the move. Congratulations to those who found it, and as I did indicate at the beginning, it would be nice to checkmate on b2. And there it is. The king covers it, the rook covers the second rank, this bishop covers d1. Now that is a sort of a tutzwang when you think about it, because as I explained in my original video, video number 1 as I'd call it, to do with the inter-insular match Jersey against Guernsey in the 1980s, the final position is not strictly speaking a tutzwang, because compulsion to move, even if the opponent could waive his right, or his opponent allowed him to waive his right, it would still be a disaster for him. But in this particular case, if black could waive his right to move, then white would not be able to deliver mate in 4. He could say, now I've waived my right, it's your 4th move. Well, he'd have to take the rook, there's no mate there, but he does have to move. He'd be safe from the mate in 4. So this is a sort of a tutzwang, I suppose you could say, but because he does have to move, it's all over, and bishop b2, and that is a very satisfying result. I hope you enjoyed that one. And just to refamiliarize ourselves with the position there, these Soviet problems are really good. I'm enjoying them immensely. I hope you are too. The next one, number 8, is the mate in 6. But what about number 9, a mate in 10? It's a toughie, there's no doubt about that. A real toughie. But I think this is no mean feat to solve this one mate in 4. It's a bit of a tricky one, and the idea is, as soon as you look at it, like I said at the beginning of this video, to get your bishop to b2 is the main aim, or d2, and we've shown that it can be checkmate on both of those squares. So thank you very much indeed for watching, and I'll be back in due course with, hopefully, I'll have solved number 8. And goodbye for now.